We are, of course, in Genesis chapter 26.
Génesis capítulo 26.
We now turn briefly to Isaac.
Ahora nos centraremos brevemente en Isaac.
It is interesting that we spend a great deal of time in looking at Abraham, chapters 11 through 25.
Es interesante que dedicamos mucho tiempo a mirar a Abraham, capítulos 11 y 25.
We also spend a great deal of time focusing on Jacob, chapters 27 through 36. We continue to see Jacob discussed for most of the rest of the book.
También dedicamos mucho tiempo a centrarnos en Jacob, capítulos 27 y 36. Seguimos viendo a Jacob discutido durante la mayor parte del resto del libro.
Much time is spent on Joseph, chapters 37 through 50. But Isaac, we see Isaac as the focus only in chapters 26 and 27.
Se dedica mucho tiempo a José en capítulo 37 y 50, pero Isaac lo vemos como el foco solo en el 26 y 27.
There is a famine in the land, verse 1.
Hay hambre en la tierra, verso 1.
And it is noted that this is in addition to the famine in Abraham's days, Genesis chapter 12 and verse 10.
Se observa que esto se suma a la hambruna en los días de Abraham, Génesis capítulo 12 y verso 10.
Genesis 26 verse 1, we read, "And there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham, and Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar."
Génesis capítulo 26, verso 1 dice, después hubo hambre en la tierra, además de la primera hambre que hubo en los días de Abraham, y se fue Isaac a Abimelech, rey de los filisteos en Gerar.
In chapter 12 and verse 10,
en capítulo 12, verso 10,
"And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land."
hubo entonces hambre en la tierra, y descendió Abraham a Egipto para morar allá, porque era grande el hambre en la tierra.
So Isaac left and went to Abimelech in Gerar.
Entonces Isaac salió y fue a Abimelech en Gerar.
Famine in the land in those days could be very severe. We will see this further in Joseph's day when he is in Egypt.
El hambre en esa tierra en aquellos días podía ser muy severa. Veremos esto más adelante en los días de José cuando esté en Egipto.
Remember that Abimelech is a title, and this is not the same Abimelech as in the days of Abraham. Likely this is his son.
Recuerde que Abimelech es un título y este no es el mismo Abimelech que en los días de Abraham. Probablemente este sea su hijo.
The Lord appears to Isaac, instructing him and promising to be with him as he was with Abraham.
El Señor se aparece a Isaac, instruyéndolo y prometiéndole estar con él como estuvo con Abraham.
In Genesis 26, verses 2 through 5,
Génesis capítulo 26, versos 2 al 5.
"And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee, for unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws."
Verso 2 al 5 dice, Y se le apareció Jehová y le dijo, no desciendas a Egipto, habita en la tierra que yo te diré. Habita como forastero en esta tierra y estaré contigo y te bendeciré, porque a ti y a tu descendencia daré todas estas tierras y confirmaré el juramento que hice a Abraham tu padre. Multiplicaré tu descendencia como las estrellas del cielo y daré a tu descendencia todas estas tierras y todas las naciones de la tierra serán benditas en tu simiente. Por cuanto yo Abraham mi voz y guardó mi precepto, mis mandamientos, mis estatutos y mis leyes.
This should be a great comfort to Isaac. It should also give him courage.
Esto debería ser un gran consuelo para Isaac, también debería darle valor.
Can lack of faith be taught? Can sin be taught?
¿Se puede enseñar la falta de fe? ¿Se puede enseñar el pecado?
Abraham twice lied about Sarah being his wife, chapters 12 and 20.
Abraham mintió dos veces acerca de que Sara era su esposa, capítulos 12 y 20.
Here we find Isaac making that same mistake. Verse 7.
Aquí encontramos a Isaac cometiendo el mismo error, verso 7.
In verse 7 we read, and the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, she is my sister, for he feared to say, she is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah when she was because she was fair to look upon.
En el verso 7 leemos, y los hombres de aquel lugar le preguntaron acerca de su mujer, y él respondió, es mi hermana, porque tuvo miedo de decir, es mi mujer, pensando que tal vez los hombres del lugar lo matarían por causa de Rebeca, pues ella era de hermoso aspecto.
Abimelech sees Isaac sporting with Rebekah.
Abimelech ve a Isaac divirtiéndose con Rebeca.
Strong's says that the Hebrew word here means laughing. It is apparent that it has some idea beyond simply laughing, but something that would show he is married to Rebekah.
Strong dice que la palabra hebrea aquí significa reír. Es evidente que tiene alguna idea más allá de simplemente reírse, sino algo que demostraría que está casado con Rebeca.
Some suggest that it has a sexual meaning.
Algunos sugieren que tiene un significado sexual.
Abimelech reproves Isaac for his deception, verse 9.
Abimelech reprende a Isaac por su engaño. Verso 9.
And Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety she is thy wife. And how saidst thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said unto him, because I said, lest I die for her.
Y llamó Abimelech a Isaac y dijo, he aquí ella es de cierto tu mujer, ¿cómo pues dijiste es mi hermana? E Isaac le respondió, porque dije quizá moriré por causa de ella.
Note that Abimelech tells him that his deception might have caused someone to sin, though he does not use this term, by having a sexual relationship with her.
Note que Abimelech le dice que su engaño pudo haber hecho que alguien pecara, aunque no usa este término al tener una relación sexual con ella.
Verse 10, and Abimelech said, what is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lain with thy wife, and thou shouldst have brought guiltiness upon us.
Verso 10, y Abimelech dijo, ¿por qué nos has hecho esto? Por poco hubiera dormido alguno del pueblo con tu mujer y hubieras traído sobre nosotros el pecado.
Obviously, her not being married would not permit someone to do so outside of marriage, but the point is taken.
Obviamente el hecho de que ella no estuviera casada no permitiría que alguien lo hiciera fuera del matrimonio, pero el punto está entendido.
Can we sin and cause someone else to sin?
¿Podemos pecar y hacer que alguien más peque?
Our actions can, in fact, lead someone else through ignorance to sin.
De hecho, nuestras acciones pueden llevar a otra persona a pecar por ignorancia.
Abraham and Isaac were followers of God. They are in a covenant with God, and yet we see men of the world having to reprove them for their actions.
Abraham e Isaac eran seguidores de Dios, están en un pacto con Dios, y sin embargo hemos visto a hombres del mundo tener que reprenderlos por sus acciones.
Abimelech warns his people not to touch either Isaac or Rebekah. Verse 11.
Abimelech advierte a su pueblo que no toque ni a Isaac ni a Rebeca.
And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, He that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death.
Verso 11. Entonces Abimelech mandó a todo el pueblo diciendo, el que tocare a este hombre o a su mujer de cierto morirá.
In verses 12 through 14, Isaac prospers.
En
Verses.
Verso 12 al 14, Isaac prospera.
Then Isaac sowed in that land and received in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. For he had possession of flocks and possession of herds and great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him.
Verso 12 al 14. Y sembró Isaac en aquella tierra y cosechó aquel año 100 por 1 y le bendijo Jehová. El varón se enriqueció y fue prosperado y se engrandeció hasta hacerse muy poderoso. Y tuvo hato de ovejas y hato de vacas y mucha labranza, y los filisteos le tuvieron envidia.
Who's prospering Isaac?
¿Quién está prosperando a Isaac?
Of course, it's God.
Por supuesto, Dios.
Remember that God promised to be with Isaac, verses 2 through 5.
Recuerde que Dios prometió estar con Isaac, versos 2 al 5.
Over and over again, we see the faithfulness of God. We should take great comfort in this.
Una y otra vez vemos la fidelidad de Dios. Esto debería consolarnos mucho.
In Genesis 25 or 26, verses 15 and 16,
En Génesis capítulo 26, verso 15 al 16.
for all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped them and filled them with earth. And Abimelech said unto Isaac, Go from us, for thou art much mightier than we.
Y todos los pozos que habían abierto los criados de Abraham, su padre, en sus días, los filisteos los habían cegado y llenado de tierra. Entonces dijo Abimelech a Isaac, apártate de nosotros, porque mucho más poderoso que nosotros te has hecho.
The Philistines fill in the wells that Abraham had dug. Is this animosity?
Los filisteos llenan los pozos que habían cavado Abraham. Animosidad.
Abimelech tells Isaac to leave, as we read in verse 16.
Abimelech le dice a Isaac que se vaya. Verso 16.
Isaac does leave, verse 17.
Isaac se va. Verso 17.
And Isaac departed thence and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there.
E Isaac se fue de ahí y acampó en el valle de Gerar y habitó ahí.
He redigs the wells that the Philistines had filled in, verse 18.
Vuelve a cavar los pozos que los filisteos habían llenado, verso 18.
And Isaac digged again the wells of water which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father. For the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called their names after the names by which his father had called them.
Y volvió a abrir Isaac los pozos de agua que habían abierto en los días de Abraham su padre, y que los filisteos habían cegado después de la muerte de Abraham, y los llamó por los nombres que su padre los había llamado.
Isaac's servants and Abimelech's servants strive together, or fuss and fight over the wells of water.
Los siervos de Abraham y los siervos de Abimelech luchan juntos, se pelean por los pozos de agua.
Obviously, wells are very important.
Obviamente los pozos son muy importantes.
Eventually, this is solved, verse 22.
Al final esto se soluciona, verso 22.
And he removed from thence and digged another well, and for that they strove not. And he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, For now the Lord hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land.
Y se apartó de ahí y abrió otro pozo, y no riñeron sobre él, y llamó su nombre Rehoboth, y dijo, porque ahora Jehová nos ha prosperado, y fructificaremos en la tierra.
In verse 24, we see God appears to Isaac again.
En verso 22, Dios se aparece nuevamente a Isaac.
And the Lord appeared unto him the same night, and he said, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and will bless thee, and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake.
Es verso 24. Y se le apareció Jehová aquella noche y le dijo, yo soy el Dios de Abraham tu padre. No temas porque yo estoy contigo y te bendeciré y multiplicaré tu descendencia por amor de Abraham mi siervo.
Abimelech, who had told Isaac to leave in verse 16, now goes to Isaac to make a treaty with him, verses 26 through 31.
Abimelech que le había dicho a Isaac que se fuera, verso 16, ahora va Isaac para hacer un tratado con él, verso 26 al 31.
Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and Ahuzzath, one of his friends, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And Isaac said unto them, Wherefore come ye to me, seeing ye hate me, and have sent me away from you? And they said, We saw certainly that the Lord was with thee, and we said, Let there be now an oath betwixt us, even between or betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee, that thou wilt do us no hurt, as we have not touched thee, and as we have done unto thee nothing but good, and have sent thee away in peace. Thou art the blessed of the Lord. Verse 30, and he said, or he and he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. And they rose up betimes in the morning, and sware one to another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace.
Capítulo 26, verso 26 al 31. Y Ahimelech vino a él desde Gerar, y a Usad, amigo suyo, y Ficol, capitán de su ejército. Y les dijo Isaac, ¿por qué venís a mí? Pues que me habéis aborrecido y me echasteis de entre vosotros. Y ellos respondieron, hemos visto que Jehová está contigo, y dijimos, hay ahora juramento entre nosotros, entre tú y nosotros, y haremos pacto contigo, que que nos hagas mal como nosotros no te hemos tocado y como solamente te hemos hecho bien y te enviamos en paz, tú eres ahora bendito de Jehová. Entonces él les hizo banquete y comieron y bebieron y se levantaron de madrugada y juraron el uno al otro. E Isaac los despidió y ellos se despidieron de él en paz.
He sees that Isaac is blessed of God, and he wants to make certain that Isaac will not harm him and his people.
Él ve que Isaac es bendecido por Dios y quiere asegurarse de que Isaac no le hará daño a él ni a su pueblo.
Esau marries 2 wives, but not of his people. This upsets Isaac and Rebekah, verses 34 and 35.
Esaú se casa con 2 esposas, pero no de su pueblo. Esto molesta a Isaac y Rebeca, versos 34 y 35.
And Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which was a grief of mine unto Isaac and to Rebekah.
Y cuando Esaú era de 40 años, tomó por mujer a Judith, hija de Beeri, Eteo, y a Basemat, hija de Elón, Eteo, y fueron amargura de espíritu para Isaac y para Rebeca.
Before you have any questions, I have a question for you guys.
Antes de que les pregunte, que si tienen alguna pregunta o comentario, él tiene una pregunta para ustedes.
We see that Abraham and Isaac both lied to about their wives, and yet God has promised them to protect them, to bless them, prosper them. We see over and over that He does prosper them. Can't we learn a lesson from this? That we should trust in God, know that He will be with us as He teaches in His Word. You understand, brother? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
We knew that God has promised it, and God cannot lie, and He hates lies. So we knew that God is going to be faithful with us, no matter what. If there's anybody that's not faithful with that.
Hebrews chapter 6, verse 18, Hebreos capítulo 6 y versículo 18. There we see, of course, what you're talking about, Bill. God cannot lie. It's not possible for Him to lie, and He has promised us that He will be with us. Now, that doesn't guarantee, and He doesn't promise us that we won't have sickness or that we won't die or that we'll have lots and lots of money and a bunch of cars and and all of that. But He does promise that He'll be with us, right? I'll never leave nor forsake thee. Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5. Hebreos capítulo 13 versículo 5. So He does promise that. And we see in this, Abraham had not originally seemed to, and I don't want to put words in Abraham's mouth, but it just seems like there was always that reservation where he didn't quite trust until the point where he takes his son up and he's ready to sacrifice him. And the Hebrews writer, in fact, tells us that he knew God had made a promise and He would have to raise him up in order to keep that promise. He was able to do that. And here Isaac, who's seen all this, what does he do? He's doing the same thing. He's following in his father's footsteps, telling that same lie that, oh, she's my sister. Now, Abraham actually, when he said that, Abraham was actually kind of telling the truth in the sense that she was his half sister, but she was his wife. So he was kind of giving part of the fact. Isaac, though, he says she's my sister, and other than saying she's my sister in the sense of she's my people. Isaac just outright lying. She's a cousin of his. Um, so he he's he's not accurate about that. Jim, did you have something to say about that?
Well, it's just not Abraham and Isaac. It's
Well,
Jacob, Joseph, on down through ages, even to today.
and do we do that sometimes?
Sure.
And I'm not necessarily saying about lying and saying, "Oh, my wife is my sister," but do we at times demonstrate that somehow we don't fully believe God by our actions?
That is one of our problems, is we voice that we believe, but our actions show reservation. We voice that we trust, but we don't really.
And you can help me, brother. Let's see if I can say this right. Dijo, dijo, dijo. Would it be dijamos or just dijo? Dijo, tengo un fe, pero we don't act like it. I'm not sure how to say that. We say that we have faith, but we don't act like we do. We don't do that.
Tengo fe, pero no hago.
Anybody else have any comments on that?
Yeah, sometimes I'm thinking that, we can realize in the Bible that Jesus coming.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming one day when you explain that people work, they say we are higher.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And the Bible, in fact, Peter says exactly what they're saying. Oh, look at everything around us. It's all like it's always been. He's not coming, but he is coming. He's coming to get his people. And when he comes, he's not coming here to live on this earth, but we're going to meet him in the air. And all of this is going to be what? Burned up, right? Destroyed. Um, and so we should always look to him and strive to serve him. Am I? Does anybody have any questions
I don't have a question, but.
or comments?
But you mentioned a little while ago that the God keeps His word and promises, and He does, and we have our ups and our downs. He doesn't. It's not. He never says that everything's going to be smooth. But it seems we got to remember that God provides us with everything that we need, not what we want, but everything that we need.
Mm-hmm. We always seem to manage, and that doesn't mean again we won't go through difficult times, and have struggles. Um, I've told about whenever I was younger, and we were poor, and I remember having where it was like things were so tight that my mother would take like macaroni and cheese, the pasta, not the macaroni and cheese. It was the macaroni, and she would mix it with ketchup, and that's what we would have. And I didn't like that too well. I like macaroni just fine, and I like ketchup, but I don't want the two together. But somehow you always seem to have what you need. You have things, and actually those difficult times. What do? They remind us to what? Trust in God, right? Put our faith in Him and depend on Him. Um, and because when everything's going well, what do we generally do? When we've got money and we've got nice cars and big houses and whatever. What do we often do? We start thinking what? Look at what I've done. Look what I've got. I got all this. And what do I need?
Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar. You mentioned the king of Babylon. What was his thought? He looked around and said, well, look what I did. Paraphrasing, of course. And what did God say? Go. There you go, Bill. I like the way it is. Go and eat grass. I don't know how you would say that in Spanish, brother, but that's essentially what it was, wasn't it? He crawled around for 7.5 times, seasons, whatever that, and there's debate about how long that is, but he was it 7.5 or 3.5,
7.5.
So I thought so. Um, he crawled around for a while eating grass, and what did God say? He was going to do that until he realized what? It wasn't he who did those things, but the God of heaven who put him in that place and allowed him to do that. And when he came to his senses, right? He stopped eating grass. I don't think I've ever eaten grass. I used to try to burn the grass in the yard, but I don't think I've ever eaten grass. Oh, I got my mother spanked me for that one, trying to set the yard on fire. Didn't work, but she did. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Preguntas or comentarios? Is that correct, Rob? You have anything, bro? Okay. Sister? You have any questions back there, Diana? Okay. Well, it's about time. Actually, it's time for us to stop. So we're gonna stop. And thanks for your attention. And hopefully these things are helpful. We'll be in chapter 27 next week. Hopefully we've had some who joined us on the internet, and we appreciate those who do.